Over the past month or so, there's been a lot of controversy surrounding Stanford's creative writing department, with some pretty big changes made to the undergraduate teaching staff. Tension is higher than ever, and there seems to be a resounding concern for the ways this might be a much larger issue than people originally anticipated. So let's dive into the specifics. What happened? What's the big deal? And why does this matter to anybody who's not in the Stanford English department? To understand what's going on, we first have to understand the history of the department. Stanford is indisputably one of the top institutions nationwide for creative writing. Despite constant comparisons to the East Coast, where Ivies and other prestigious institutions have long dominated the humanities, Stanford has made a large effort to distinguish itself as a top university in all fields. The creative writing department has largely exceeded the original intentions of the program since it was founded by Wallace Stegner in 1946, with the aim of providing young, talented writers the guidance, encouragement, and funding to further their writing knowledge and craft. Today, it's one of the top minors on campus. It continually pumps out both undergraduate, fellow, and faculty books and collections that receive high praise, and the 2-year Stegner Fellowship is considered to be one of the most prestigious and unique non-graduate degree programs for modern writers in the US, if not the world. This level of success stems from a lot of different factors, and a long history of building a unique community with very clear values. The teaching faculty consists of different positions and roles to best meet the needs of an increasingly interested undergraduate population, as well as the world-renowned Stegner Fellows in the prime of their writing careers. Like any department, there are higher-level administrative roles and professors who largely focus on teaching Stegner Fellow workshops and running the department as a whole. In contrast, there are also lecturers who teach the vast majority of undergraduate classes and workshops, and these are what you might consider the less permanent positions in comparison to the tenured faculty. As you can imagine, in a department that is expanding exponentially, with undergrads demanding more and more lecturers to teach classes with long wait lists, there's been a lot of built-up tension between the professors and administration with very reputable and comfortable positions, and the equally qualified lecturers who are considered to be underpaid and overlooked, despite their very large contribution to the creative writing department and Stanford as a whole. An important development to consider within the history of the department is the passing of the previous creative writing director, Yvonne Bolin, in April of 2020. Her death was shocking to the community and in many ways an unapologetic spotlight on the lack of clear administrative direction beneath her. After a lot of discussion, and mostly a lack of interest to fill Bolin's big shoes, Nicholas Jenkins stepped up to the plate and has been the director of the program ever since. Since he's held that title, he's had no shortage of demands and complaints surrounding larger-scale desired changes within the program. Outside sources have complained about the lack of diversity in the program, a pretty concerning accusation for an extremely liberal university that prides itself on DEI. Students have complained about the growing waitlists and difficulty to enroll in almost every creative writing class and workshop offered, with the hardship increasing as the class number, and therefore writing level, goes up. And the tale as old as time, lecturers were pushing for wage increases after years of making less than a high school teacher in the Bay Area. And this leads us to the big controversy of the last couple of months. There are a lot of rumors, opinions, and misinformation being spread from all angles of the current issue, so let's get straight to the facts of what actually happened. A Zoom meeting that took place on August 21st, held by deans, directors, and professors, stood as the official announcement. They explained to 23 current lecturers that, despite all of the amazing student-teacher evaluations they had been receiving over the past 15 years, they would all be cycled out over the next 2 years. While Jenkins has firmly stood by his dislike of the term firing, the fact of the matter is that these 23 lecturers will have their employment terminated and will be required to find work elsewhere. Now, the administration originally came to this conclusion as a proposed solution to several demands. The main hypothesized positive outcome was that a larger number of positions will now be available to the Stegner Fellows once they finish their 2-year fellowship. This will allow them to continue working on their projects while being funded through teaching positions on a contract of 1 to 2 years, possibly up to 5 under certain circumstances. This also addresses the claims that the teaching faculty has been fairly stagnant in previous years, with not only a lack of diversity, but also a lack of matriculation. But what most people don't consider in this proposed plan is the unfortunate irony surrounding this large-scale termination of contracts. For one, it's important to note that every writer who was hired to be one of these Jones lecturers was at one point a Stegner Fellow themselves. While the original purpose of the Jones lecturers was to provide teaching positions to a Stegner Fellow as a means of continuing their passions by inspiring the next generation of writers, The position evolved over time, where many lecturers found a deeper calling to teaching, even stronger than their original passion for writing. In this way, many lecturers set aside their own projects to fully invest in the undergraduate program, creating new classes, new programs, new opportunities, and even unprecedented levels of mentorship that the university often uses as advertising for the rich student-to-faculty connections on campus. Another unsettling connection is the fact that this decision comes less than a year after a large push by the lecturers to increase their pay. This did result in a somewhat substantial increase from $62,000 roughly to $78,000, which is still fairly low considering that $104,000 is considered the current required income to be comfortably low income in the SF area. While those in administration have repeatedly denied any connection between the two suspiciously close changes, one can't help but wonder if one reconsideration led to the other. So where are we now? Some might say that this intentionally low-profile delivery of the administrative decision ended up backfiring astronomically in ways that no one could have predicted. One of the 23 lecturers who had been teaching for over 20 years, Tom Keeley, responded immediately with an article on his platform Medium, as well as the Stanford Daily, shedding light on the situation. From there, students, alumni, current Stanford faculty, and everyone in between began voicing their own opinions on the matter, with some referring to the initial meeting as the Red Wedding, a nod to the classic Game of Thrones episode where the Stark family is annihilated out of nowhere. Many undergraduates felt betrayed by what they felt was a lack of representation in the overall decision. While there's some controversy over who exactly was part of the vote, it's generally understood that those who are listed as the main directors and professors of the program were responsible for this decision that now seems to extend beyond the scope of who they believed they were affecting. Students and faculty have been holding gatherings, writing articles, creating infographics, and doing everything they can to get the word out there and put this issue into perspective for others. As students took to their own devices, rallying behind lecturers and taking their own initiatives to fight this decision, directors and deans alike were faced with the overwhelming dilemma of how to best meet the needs of their students while staying true to their original decision. Although Stanford has only been in session for about 4 weeks of the academic year, there's an immense pressure on the creative writing program to essentially confront the backlash so that the university can move on from this controversial topic. Despite efforts to create other long-term solutions, the directors and deans have decided it's best to meet with lecturers and students in smaller groups to best answer questions and essentially create enough clarity to be able to mitigate the growing tension and confusion. I myself attended one of these coffee chats, where a maximum of 6 students were able to sign up at once to meet with Nick Jenkins to speak for an hour. As you might imagine, the tension in the air was palpable, as students immediately put on the pressure, trying to see if there was any room for regret or means of rescinding the original decision. But Jenkins held to his original reasons, trying to explain the long-term goals for the program as a whole, with the growing demand for opportunities for emerging young writers. While no one seems to dispute the need for more diversity and opportunities for these new writers, there seems to be a deep divide in the ways that which people think is the best way to go about this. The lecturers and students seem to be pushing for a more stable means of creative opportunity, where there is a body of lecturers who have longer, well-paid contracts to ensure that the heart of the program and the style of workshops stay long after they leave, in addition to other types of positions to make room for incoming writers who are just as deserving of an opportunity. Administrative faculty seem to believe that the change begins with a large-scale reinvention of the program, where priority is given to the renowned Stegner Fellows, who can matriculate from a fellowship opportunity to the beginnings of a teaching career and reshape the undergraduate classes in new and exciting ways. The tension doesn't seem to be dying down, as the administration do their best to try to find more intimate ways of addressing concerns. The most recent controversy, which may be the most telling moment yet, was when the Stanford Dean of Humanities and Sciences, Deborah Satz, released a letter to students in response to the growing demand for a town hall to voice their concerns and experiences on a larger scale to the directors. In this letter, she stated, "It is important to keep in mind that departments and programs make decisions about staffing and teaching on a regular basis. Town halls are not held because academic units make personnel decisions with which students or others may disagree." What was intended to be a way of diverting attention away from a town hall ended up exploding into a reevaluation of whether or not Stanford as an institution even values democratic principles within its own campus. On September 23, 2023, Satz wrote in her op-ed, It is our responsibility as educators to equip students to live in a democratic society whose members will inevitably disagree on many things. To strengthen speech on campuses, we need to return civic education to the heart of our curriculum. Students began viewing her most recent address as censorship, and what was meant to be preventative of every administrative decision being up for debate ended with students being appalled by the lack of accountability and representation in administration. But perhaps this misunderstanding is scratching the surface of a much larger systematic problem. This situation feels eerily similar to the New Yorker article by Nathan Helen, published last year, titled "The End of the English Major." As the title implies, we seem to be reaching a point where society is no longer seeing the values of the humanities in an increasingly technology-oriented world. With young adults feeling intense pressure from parents and salaries dictating the importance of STEM fields, it's no wonder that the humanities departments at top institutions are seeing less interest and, by default, less funding. Despite all of our modern trends pointing towards the need for STEM majors to create innovation and supply the careers we value in the everyday, such as doctors and engineers, it takes only a moment to reflect and realize that the humanities offer more than we can actually comprehend. The arts are the backbone of culture and entertainment. Philosophy keeps us accountable in our ethics and corporate decisions. History keeps us from repeating the same detrimental mistakes. Political science allows for future politicians to be well-educated and empathetic. There are quite literally hundreds of more qualified individuals than myself to explain the value of the humanities. I'm sure there are a few 10-minute TED Talk videos that can sum it up pretty well. But the underlying truth is that in the way that STEM fields allow for us to live life more efficiently, the arts and humanities make life worth living. And the number one way that you convey this to the world is by valuing these departments in the most influential institutions. This dilemma extends so far between 23 lecturers being cycled out. Creative writing is considered to be one of the most approachable subjects to non-humanities majors and people in general. It's a generally easy way to become more in tune with yourself and the world around you through a medium of expression that is as simple as writing words. At Stanford, it's a community of people, a total of 15 students per workshop, that values the stories of each person and allows for undergraduates to be seen and heard in ways that is unique to this department alone. This has proven to be both a positive and negative reinforcer for value. Many people use the high population of Stanford students taking these classes for exposure or therapeutic reasons as a means for discrediting its value in an academic institution. But there are also many students who become deeply serious about creative writing through these classes, deciding to major in it through English, and even going on to participate in programs like MFAs and getting their works published. But what people need to realize is that this, and this is how you save the English major. This is how you show the world to value the humanities. By allowing these kinds of programs to thrive and grow. By becoming exemplary models for how to treat lecturers and all staff who are not protected by untouchable permanent positions. By creating spaces for difficult conversations and decisions that allow for all voices to be heard. By creating long-term plans to meet the complex needs of an ever-changing area of study that will lead Stanford and everyone else into a brighter future. But what do you think? I used a healthy combination of information directly from the English and Creative Writing website, letters and addresses from administration, letters from lecturers, and other sources related to these topics. If you're interested in learning more about the administrative perspective and speaking to people who were mentioned earlier in this video, here's where you can find them. If you're interested in learning more about the perspectives and experiences of students and lecturers on campus, here's where you can find more information. Remember to do your own research and don't take my word for anything. But don't be dissuaded by all the confusing angles of this issue. It's meant to be a difficult conversation. If it's controversial with no clear end in sight, chances are it's probably something you should look into. Thanks for watching!